Hi, I'm Dave Wurzel, and you're watching PHTV4. This is Living Well. On Living Well, we look at topics related to a healthy lifestyle, whether it's nutrition or exercise. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about how meditating can be part of a healthy lifestyle. With us today to explore that topic is Reverend Chris Hopkins. We're at the Center on Southwest Highway. Chris, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Dave. Thanks for the invitation.
It's good to be back. I think we interviewed maybe a little over a year ago. And I really enjoyed that interview. Today we'll talk about meditating, but before we do that, maybe a little bit of background on yourself, and we can kind of connect into how meditating connects into your lifestyle.
Sure. I started here at the center about 11 years ago as pastoral director. Since that time, I do Sunday services, I offer some classes, just build up the fellowship of the community here. And I've been a meditator since about the late 1990s.
So you've been practicing for a while. Beforehand, you were telling me that you did a retreat, like a full-long experience. Do you want to mention that?
Well, I started trying to meditate on my own and really struggled with it. So I went away on an 8-day silent retreat. And when I say silent, I mean it was silent. You couldn't talk, you couldn't bring a book, you could not even make eye contact with people. And we were offered instruction in Buddhist meditation practices, but married it with Christian theology. Our days were spent in sitting meditation, and then walking meditation, and then sitting meditation, and then eating meditation, and the pattern kept on for the entire day for 8 solid days.
Well, now there's a lot of, I think we want to revisit several. There's a lot of great topics to cover there. And I think the one point you mentioned that's really important we take a minute to talk about is that, like, okay, I'm going to go start meditating. And when I started meditating, I had that same thing. Like, it wasn't easy in the beginning. It was kind of difficult. I wasn't necessarily sure what I was doing. I kind of learned how, in some cases through books, some guided. And eventually I got to a point where I felt comfortable, but it wasn't easy in the beginning. Do you want to talk about that? Like, how might a person start out and as you mentioned, we'll get to, there's a lot of different ways to meditate.
Sure. Well, I'm going to say one thing. It wasn't easy starting out to meditate, and there are some days now it is still not easy to meditate. But I did, as you did, I read a lot of books, and I went to some workshops about meditation. But then I would always go home, and at that time my kids were small. They were in elementary school, so they were away during the day. And I found myself trying to meditate first thing in the morning before the kids got up. But then, of course, my mind was working with everything that had to go on. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll try doing it at night when they're in bed. And of course, that's when I fell asleep because it was a busy day. And then I tried to meditate maybe right before they came home from school. And that seemed to work. So the first thing I had to do when I started meditating was figure out when I wanted to meditate, when it was more convenient to meditate.
And I think that's a really good point, especially starting out, and then once you get into the routine, finding the when and where, right? Because you can't, distractions, noises, people coming and going, that's not going to help you get into that routine. And there are different ways to meditate. Maybe we should talk about specifically one of them, or we'll get maybe to a couple of them, but one, like a sitting meditation, maybe something, where we're focusing on breath, or even sometimes referred to as silent sitting or a variation of that. Why don't we talk about that type of meditation first, what that experience is like?
Well, Dave, as you said at the beginning of the program, I am the pastoral director here, so I'm an ordained minister. So my faith has always been really important to me, and so when I first started out, I started out with Christian meditation, which is commonly known as centering prayer. In that meditation, you sit down and attempt to settle your mind, but your intention is to be focused on the presence of God. When I went on that long 8-day retreat, it was focused on Buddhist meditation practices, which I found very helpful in settling my mind in the presence of God. Now, when Buddhists meditate, since they don't necessarily, some do, some don't, believe in God, but their whole intention is to be in the present moment. Sitting meditation can fulfill your practice of prayer. It can be a way of settling your mind in sort of the desire to be present to your life. And then people use meditation in a more secular way, just trying to reduce anxiety and their constant need for the fulfillment of something to do and somewhere to go. A lot of folks say that they can't meditate, not for prayer, not for philosophical reasons, but simply because their bodies are too antsy. So they first try to sit, to try to become present as a way of calming their anxieties. And for some, it's helpful. For some, it's not. But in a sitting meditation, a lot depends upon the reason you want to sit and be present.
And I think you bring up a really good point, and again, something you mentioned earlier, talking about sitting meditation, like, well, again, for how long, let's say, as an example, because in the beginning, a minute or 2 minutes might be the most you can manage. Whereas, yes, I've heard the stories where people meditate for 50 minutes or an hour or longer. And no, that's not something out of the box, and I have talked to people like that. No, I just can't meditate because they get stressed out trying to meditate and they can't meditate. So maybe we need to talk a little bit about what meditating is, and I'll kind of steer, I hope the direction we're going is the idea of being, I think the word used was present, right? What is meditation? Well, part of meditating is getting yourself present in the moment, dealing with all those distractions or, the monkey brain kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So meditation, primarily, no matter for what reason you do it, is all about being where you are. Sitting this moment, right here, right now. But so many times, as you know, when you start doing that, you find you're not here. You're thinking about the future, you're thinking about the past. So across the board in the different, whether it be for prayer or Buddhism or secular meditation, there's different techniques. There's different things that you can focus on, pay attention to. One focus of attention is your breath. And that goes across the board. So the recommendation is to sit down in a comfortable position. Now, some, like Zen meditators, you have to be very upright, very disciplined. Christian meditators say, don't worry so much about that. Just find a comfortable, relaxed position, but not too relaxed so you don't fall asleep. But sit down, find a space that you're comfortable in. If it's your bed and you're not going to fall asleep, great. If it's a corner of your family room and it can be a quiet time, awesome. If you want to go outside, that's okay too. But find somewhere where you can sit down and not be highly distracted. And then, well, here, I will tell you, when I first started meditating, they told me to meditate for 20 minutes. And I will be honest, there was no way I was going to meditate for 20 minutes. When I sat down and I set a kitchen timer for 20 minutes, I thought I was going to jump out of my skin. All of a sudden, I closed my eyes, took a good deep breath. I had my timer going, and I thought, okay, it's got to be 20 minutes. And I looked, and like a minute and a half went by, and I thought it was an eternity.
So, and that brings up I think a really good thing to consider. Like, meditation isn't necessarily easy. It's not something everybody just jumps into and it happens. It's like anything. It's a skill that you practice and you kind of acquire over time. And I'd like to pick up where you're talking about the breathing. I think one of the most fundamental parts of meditating, and probably the great first place to start, is some type of focused meditation. And usually we would say focusing on your breath, breathing in and breathing out. Mm-hmm. There are visual meditations and there are thought all kinds. How about talk about the breathing part of it and how that helps a person focus when they're picking up the routine of meditating?
So the breath, we always have it. It doesn't matter if it's shallow or if it's deep or if it's rapid or if it's slow. If we are alive, we are breathing. So the breath is especially handy. It's always with you. But most of the time we don't pay attention. So the recommendation is when you breathe in your mind you say very gently, in. And when you breathe out, you say in your mind very gently, out. And it's this cycle, this rhythm of in and out. And I will guarantee you that every meditator, whether you're just beginning or you've been doing it for 40 years, all of a sudden your mind is going to wander. And you're going to start thinking about things that happened, 2 days ago, 6 years ago, or what is going to happen during, when you're done meditating. The trick is to become aware that you're not thinking in and out, but you're thinking about past or present. And when you become aware that you're thinking either in the future or in the past tense, you say to yourself, oops, thinking, and you go back to your breath. Now, one important piece of advice I received from Father Thomas Keating, he is now passed on. He said you can always tell that you're making progress in meditation for when you catch yourself. Mm-hmm. Do you berate yourself? Oh my gosh, there I go again. I'm thinking, I wasn't paying attention to my breath. I'm never going to do this, and you start beating yourself up. Or do you go back to your breath and say, yeah, there I go again. I was thinking, but I'm back. And you're more gentle with yourself.
And I love that idea, and I've heard that idea in workshops and read in several books. The idea that you're not going to beat yourself up. That's what your brain does. It thinks, right? And so acknowledge, oh, I'm having a thought, or I'm worried about something, or I'm thinking about an appointment. You acknowledge the thought, kind of gently let it go, let it drift away, bring yourself back to your breathing. And I love the other point you made about whether you've been doing it for a week or for 40 years. That's how the brain works. And so what we're really practicing is not stopping our thoughts, not trying to turn them away, but becoming aware of them, managing them, and trying to be present. Right? So we've talked about this type of meditation. I wonder if maybe we can talk about walking meditation, but do you want to do it down at the Labyrinth?
Love to. That'd be great. I'd love to do it down at the Labyrinth.
All right. Why don't we, let's take a quick break. We'll head down to the Labyrinth and we'll continue down there. We'll talk about walking meditation. Okay. So we're going to continue this conversation about meditating. We're down at the Labyrinth right now, which is going to give us a chance to talk about how you might use this. But Chris, it kind of brings up some of the problems we were talking about. Challenges to meditate. There's a lot of different ways to meditate. There are a lot of experiences that people have on a daily basis that might be meditative like. But how about I'm going to run the scenario by you. What if you're a mom or a dad or whatever your home situation is, and there's distraction or there's an endless schedule going, and you got to be here, you got to be there, or there's kids running around. How do we manage that so we can make meditation part of our routine?
Dave, so many people have said to me, I love the idea of meditation, but my life is too crazy. I work long hours, I got a busy family, and I so know that experience. I had 4 kids in 5 years when I first started to try meditating, and that's when I think I mentioned to you, I struggled to find the right time of day when I could actually do some quiet, present moment attention, which is what meditation is across the board. So I would often recommend to people that don't try to sit for 20 minutes or an hour when you're just beginning. Now maybe you have a personality can do that. And so then if you can, go for it. But if you find yourself really struggling to sit for 20 minutes, find a place in your home where it might be a little bit more quiet. I've heard some people meditating in the bathroom. It's the only time people give them privacy, okay? Perhaps you can get up 10 minutes before the rest of the family. If you're a morning coffee or tea drinker, you can get yourself your morning beverage, sit down in a chair, and then for 1 minute, only 1 minute, don't try to do 20. But pay attention to your morning cup of coffee. Feel the warmth of the cup. Take a breath. See, perhaps there's a candle lit in the room, or just a nightlight somewhere, and just breathe. When you lift the coffee cup to your mouth to drink, know that you're getting ready to take a drink. And if you can do simply that, you're meditating. Congratulations, it's awesome. And then maybe you do that for a week or two. And then the next week, you decide, okay, maybe I could do this for 2 minutes. And then after another week, it's 3 minutes. And when you get to about 5 or 10 minutes, you're ready to make a jump to the full 20. You can do that. But you don't have to do it right at the beginning.
Yeah, and I love that image of, and you reminded me, I did a retreat here with you a couple years ago probably, where we did the tea by the campfire. We did that. We did lunch, and all of a sudden you start to taste foods instead of just in a hurry to get through a meal. And it's a meditative like experience. You kind of remind me of that, and I've talked to friends who, they're runners or they're fishermen or they're hikers or whatever, and when they talk about that experience, it sounds like meditating. When you talk about drinking that morning cup of coffee or that morning tea, and those few moments, it's very meditative like.
Absolutely it is. Meditation across the board is simply being where you are. It's paying attention. That's all it is. We can add on lots of rules and regulations and customs, but essentially across the board, it's simply paying attention to what you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, and that's a great, maybe that's how we can transition to talk about walking meditation. Doing something, and these exercises help you become present. They help you become mindful in that moment, right? So let's talk a little bit about this labyrinth, which is really a beautiful setting here for it. What is walking meditation, and what is that experience like?
Well, Dave, so many people have said to me, there's no way I can sit and meditate. I'm too jumpy. My body just doesn't sit still. My brain is like crazy. Drives me nuts when I try to sit and meditate. So sometimes it's easier for folks to move while they meditate. And if you go on retreats on meditation, they'll have you walking back and forth 20 paces. At the center, we have a labyrinth, and a labyrinth is simply a walking meditation. Now, some people confuse it with a maze. A maze has dead ends and wrong turns. Mazes are designed to make you lose your way. A labyrinth has no dead ends. It has no wrong turns. It has one entrance, one path. When you walk the path, you will find your way to the middle, and you take the very same path on the way out. A labyrinth is designed to help you find your way. It's quite simple. There's a path. You find the entrance, and you just walk. And that's all you have to do. Now, some people will say, well, you can't get lost on a labyrinth because there's only one path. And I am here to tell you, and anybody who this has happened to, I've gotten lost on the labyrinth. Because I've stopped, and a bird has caught my attention, or a cloud, or the beauty of the sky, like today's blue sky. And all of a sudden, I can't remember if I was walking that way or I was going that way. And I found myself going in the wrong direction. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that you pay attention. And when you're walking out in nature, there's plenty to pay attention to. So the labyrinth actually has a very narrow path, so it kind of forces you to pay attention to the path, because if you don't pay attention to where you're walking, you're going to miss the next turn. So it focuses your attention for you.
That sounds like meditation, the experience you're talking about, like hearing the bird or the wind or some distraction. That's kind of what you if you're sitting meditating or walking meditating, you become aware I'm having a thought or I'm distracted, whatever the thing is, and you kind of bring yourself back into the experience. That's really good, and I think that's a good other example of a type of meditation that might work better for a person in a situation. I know the first time I tried walking meditation, I had a really hard time with it, and I tried it in different places and at different times, kind of like you were talking about meditating earlier, and eventually now I find it's one of the ones I like. When I can be in the right place at the right time, it's one of my favorites. And maybe that's something we can help people with a little bit. There's all kinds of research that talks about, how meditation can help physically, relieving stress, emotionally, spiritually, managing anxiety, excuse me, a variety of ways. Um, so there are all kinds of benefits to it, but let's talk about how can we help people get into it. Let's say they've never done it before or they're kind of new to it. I know there are programs here. There's opportunities to meditate here. I know on occasion you've done retreats. Why don't we talk about those a little bit first?
Well, the programs here at the center are primarily group meditations. So we're all wearing our masks, okay, until this pandemic is completely over. On Tuesday evenings, we have a silent sit, which means simply we gather as a group. There's a beginning bell. We sit silently for 20 minutes, an ending bell, and a brief prayer. The advantage of a group meditation, even though it is silent, it's one thing to do it on your own, but you can give yourself excuses, and it's really hard to meditate by yourself. But when you meditate with a group, there's a different energy, perhaps. It's somehow easier to be present. I do think it is energy, that we're all intending the same thing. On Monday mornings at 9 a.m., we do a group meditation, and it is called metta meditation, which is together as a group. We have a form that we follow, and we pray for peace for ourselves first, always for ourselves first, peace and good health and equanimity. But then we gradually extend these desires for peace and good health and equanimity to our loved ones, and then to the people we don't know, and then the people we struggle with, and then all of creation. So that what we want for ourselves, we want for all people, all of creation. It's the way that I look at it when Jesus says, love your enemies. It's the best way I know that I can do that, because if I want to be happy, I also need to want them to be happy. And I honestly think that if we can do that for everybody, we're going to get along a lot better. But that's all my own personal view.
Well, I know that same thing. I know there's research on that when you are able to reach out to other people or care about other people's welfare or wish them the best. Do you want to share your prayer with them? I know you have it on the card. The thing with you.
I can.
While you're digging that out, I was going to say, and you talked about meditating in a group. You can meditate by yourself, and that's a great way to do it. I do that. You can meditate with a partner or a spouse, or you can extend it out and meditate in a group. They're all a little bit different, all effective in that way, whatever that way is. I think I would say this, and maybe call it a prayer is not the right thing. I know in a Buddhist setting, they would probably talk about a meditative thought, sending a meditative thought out to the universe or something like that. Still basically working the same structure, same pattern. Okay, yeah, do you mind reading through it for us?
Not at all. Beginning with oneself. May I be at peace. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I be happy and healthy. May I live my life with ease. Simple as that. And then you take those desires that you've just done for yourself, you extend them to the people that you love the most. And then people you really don't know, like the clerk at the grocery store, or the bus drivers, or the people driving on the highway just behind us. And then you bring it to the people you struggle with. And that's an important piece. And you don't have to necessarily have to feel warm fuzzies towards the people that you struggle with. That's probably impossible. That's why you're struggling, because you don't feel warm fuzzy. But if they could feel at peace, it would go a long way to creating world peace. And then you do it for all of creation, for all critters, And it's a way of opening our hearts, which is transformative.
Yeah, absolutely. That opening your heart is one of those powerful things. It makes you feel good, right? It makes you feel better. All right, so let's talk about, you have some things, activities here, some programs here, some experiences here, other resources for people to tap into.
You know, books are great, and I read a lot of them, and I've read a lot of books. You know, in the Christian tradition, there's the Centering Prayer of Thomas Keating, tons of Buddhist books. Search Inside of Yourself was written by Ming Wang, maybe. I'm not sure I'm getting the author right, but he worked at Google, so they have meditation classes at Google. They have a Labyrinth at Google. But I actually find the apps now, if you're fluid with a smartphone, they have meditation apps. There's 10% Happier. Dan Harris was a news anchor. Apparently he had an anxiety attack on national news. Like 10 million people saw him having this anxiety attack, and he now meditates on a regular basis. There's guided meditations. So we've been talking about silent meditation and walking meditation. There are some forms of meditations where you have someone guiding you, instructing you on think about this or focus on that. And guided meditations work.
And I was going to say, so like guided meditations, and you mentioned app. I mean, the two that immediately, and I don't, not to intentionally leave any out, immediately come to mind are Insight is one, and Headspace is another. And you can find a lot of meditation or guided meditations on YouTube. They're all over. So there's a lot of ways to access this if you want to, and there are a lot of good books that address it if you want to look up and you want to go that route. And Chris, anything else you want to add about that? This is a big topic.
You know, Dave, it's a huge topic, and we've just barely even scratched the surface. The one thing, though, there was a priest down in Latin America who often said, pray as you can, don't pray as you can't. So if you're interested in exploring meditation, meditate as you can. If sitting silent doesn't work for you, don't do a silent meditation. If drinking your morning cup of coffee works for you, that's your meditation. If it's walking or running or swimming, find a way that helps you become present, and then you have to do it. It's not going to help if you do it once a month, I'll be honest with you. You know, it's something that needs to be a part of your daily life. You know, okay, maybe not 5 or 7 days a week. You know, 3 days a week, probably at a minimum, because the effects of meditation, you don't do it for the results, but as a byproduct of sitting and being present on a regular basis, you do change. You do find the ability to find calm in the storm. When life is going crazy, you have a tool that allows you to find some way to step back from the craziness of your life, to breathe deep, to acknowledge the issue of anxiety or struggle, whatever it is, and it gives you one more tool to step back out of it and find your center again. And I can tell you from personal experience, that is worth everything.
Yeah, you've captured perfectly. I can't say it any better. You're talking about, in my mind, an investment like this for just, you know, a world of health by it. Chris, thank you very much, Reverend Hopkins. This has been great. I love visiting with you. This is wonderful, you know, information, and I hope very helpful. We're at the center. I'm Dave Wurzel with Reverend Chris Hopkins. We've been talking about meditation. You've been watching Living Well. Thank you, and be healthy.